My friends were dying, and so I had to do something.
We have made drastic progress in driving down new HIV diagnoses.
We've made leaps and bounds.
Tangible solutions on how we can assist our trans siblings.
They want a place they can go when they're worried about what's going on in the world.
Pride's not just about celebration, it's about resistance and remembrance.
Hello, I'm Frank DiLella, and welcome to Still Marching, a NY1 Pride Month special. We're coming to you from the Alice Austin House Museum, known as Clear Comfort, right here on Staten Island. This historic site holds a special place in LGBTQ+ history and was once home to one of America's most influential and trailblazing female photographers. Alice Austin was born in 1866, and it's been said she shattered the confines of Victorian-era societal norms. Austin captured more than 8,000 images chronicling everyday life, including her own life with Gertrude Tate, her partner of more than 50 years. We'll have more on Austin and her legacy a little later in the show. But first, while Austin lived during a time when her relationship had to remain hidden, enormous progress for the LGBTQ+ community has been made since. From the Stonewall Uprising to marriage equality, the community has fought hard for rights, visibility, and acceptance. Still, today's headlines remind us that the fight is far from over. Across the country, legislation is being introduced to roll back rights, especially for the trans community. But here in New York, some protections have only strengthened. Signed into law in 2019, GENDA, the Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act, makes it illegal to discriminate based on gender identity or expression. And the state's human rights law ensures that LGBTQ+ New Yorkers are protected at work, in housing, and in public spaces. And while protections like these are crucial, real support often starts on the local level. In our first story, we head up to the Bronx and meet the founder of a vital resource center. Rocco Vertuccio tells us how Destination Tomorrow is creating lasting impact, one person and one day at a time.
A photo of Sean Ebony Coleman's late grandmother sits proudly in his Bronx office. It's more than a memento, it's a guiding force.
My mom had me when she was really young. So we kind of grew up together, and my grandmother was my parental figure. And what she taught me, she used to say, you add stars to your crown by the good that you do.
Coleman is the founder and CEO of Destination Tomorrow, an LGBTQ+ resource center launched in 2009. His journey to this point was not an easy one. It involved years of discovery, acceptance, and a few wrong turns, but it landed him here, doing good, just like his grandmother taught him.
It's not about doing good for yourself, it's about reaching out and making sure that other people have the things that they need.
To Coleman, those things, access, support, community, should be available to everyone. But growing up as a transgender person during the height of the AIDS epidemic and at a time when gender transition care was scarce, he didn't see those resources reflected in his world.
What does equity look like? When I started DT, it was out of a sense of need. I didn't see people that understood my challenges, right? So if you don't understand my challenges or my lived experiences, how can you help me survive those things? Or how can you help me provide the tools that I'm gonna need to be successful?
For those in the Black LGBTQ+ community, especially Black trans women, Coleman says the need for culturally competent support systems is crucial. They face some of the highest rates of discrimination, housing insecurity, and violence in the United States. According to the Human Rights Campaign, at least 36 transgender and gender non-conforming people were killed in the U.S. in 2024. Nearly half of them were Black trans women.
Folks love to speak about how Black trans women are the most vulnerable, but then it stops there, right? We know that they're the most vulnerable. We know that they're the most endangered, but funding, resources, access to a platform that could help change that doesn't happen. So I think the challenge is making folks understand that your allyship should lead you into not just pointing out that fact, but coming up with tangible solutions on how we can better assist our trans siblings.
Across the country, anti-LGBTQ+ legislation is on the rise. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, more than 500 bills targeting LGBTQ+ rights were introduced in state legislatures in 2024. These include bans on gender-related medical treatment, restrictions on school curricula, bathroom access regulations, and efforts to roll back non-discrimination protections.
Going to do all of this.
For Coleman, that's all the more reason to stay rooted and to keep growing.
That safe, inclusive space.
The Bronx location is expanding to a second floor. New offices have opened in Washington, D.C. and Atlanta. These full-service hubs offer everything from job readiness programs and housing assistance to free HIV testing and legal services. For some, it has even served as a direct path to employment. Flava walked through the doors in 2016 as a client. Now, she's a volunteer coordinator.
I came a long way. They're like my second family. They're my chosen family. And anytime that I was going through something, Destination Tomorrow was the place to be.
That idea of a chosen family and of building something better for the next day is exactly what Coleman's grandmother instilled in him.
I didn't want to have trans in the name because we're so much bigger than that. And I think folks get lost right there, right? I'm a father, soon to be new father, I'm a husband, I'm a brother, I'm an uncle, I'm so many other things. And the only thing that people want to recognize is, oh, you're trans? And it's like, you didn't hear all of the other things that I just told you? My grandmother taught me to think long term, right? So long term, what is it that you want? Your destination is tomorrow. If that's in fact the case, what are we doing today to make sure you have a significant tomorrow?
Thank you, Rocco. Okay, it's time for a quick break, but when we return, how funding cuts could impact HIV prevention and care programs.
Any kind of erosion in funding that threatens that workforce is highly concerning, not just for HIV, but for public health in general.
That and more when we come back. Activism with pizzazz. Broadway Bears is an annual burlesque show that has raised almost $30 million for Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS.
I was dancing naked on a drum in the Will Rogers Follies, and my friends were dying. And so I had to do something, and the only thing I knew how to do was put on a show.
In 1992, Tony Award-winning choreographer Jerry Mitchell gathered some of his friends to do what they do best, dance, and this time for a cause. 33 years later, the money still goes to the same places, helping people access food and health care, and raising awareness for HIV/AIDS.
It's celebrating life. It's giving people the power to take the power to live the life they want to live.
Moving now downtown, the New York City AIDS Memorial honors the more than 100,000 New Yorkers who have lost their lives to the illness and those who bravely advocated for them.
Pride's not just about celebration, it's about resistance and it's about remembrance. And so remembering the heroes, those who fought and paved the way for us to have the world that we have today.
It's a busy month for the New York City AIDS Memorial with several opportunities to mark Pride. That includes the sound installation looking back on gay choruses from 1985 to 1995.
They would perform them to audiences to kind of raise awareness around these issues, but also I think to communicate something emotional and to express something and share it with other people.
Welcome back to NY1's Pride Month special. I'm Frank DiLella. Advocacy through protests, art, and fundraising has been a substantial factor in the declining number of new cases of HIV. More than 1,000 people are newly diagnosed with HIV in New York City each year. But now it's unclear whether federal funding for virus prevention and care programs will continue, a move that threatens to undo years of progress. National Health reporter Aaron Billups has more.
HIV/AIDS, back then, it was more, AIDS, right? The way that I felt towards it back then was a death sentence.
Shauna Brooks is a trans woman. When she was a teen, newly out, her close friend Isis, another trans woman, died of AIDS.
Her passing away affected me, and that's why I always been protected and guarded in intimacy.
The LGBTQ community has carried a disproportionate share of those burdened by the HIV/AIDS epidemic.
We die!
The community had to fight against bigotry and fear, crying out for resources to save lives and find a cure for AIDS. At the height of the HIV/AIDS epidemic in the early 90s, there were more than 12,500 newly diagnosed with AIDS in the city annually. Dr. Sarah Braunstein heads the city's Bureau of Hepatitis, HIV, and Sexually Transmitted Infections. She says funding for treatment and prevention programs was secured largely through the work of AIDS activists.
We have made drastic progress since in driving down new HIV diagnoses. Our latest data are for 2023, and those numbers for new diagnoses in that year, just above 1,600 new diagnoses, represent a 70% decline since 2001, even a 36% decline from 2014.
Access to PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, is a big part of the prevention arsenal. Nearly a decade ago, Brooks began taking the antiviral medication, a daily pill that prevents infection.
I was dating someone who was HIV positive, and I was a little weary, unsure, so we went to the doctor. I felt reassured being able to protect myself with, preventative measures, 1 pill a day.
Thanks to PrEP, Brooks remains HIV negative. She wouldn't have had access to it without federally supported prevention programs. Braunstein says in order to keep infections down, more people need to be on PrEP.
We see huge inequities in who is uptaking PrEP. Many more men than women. We see much higher proportions of PrEP users being white compared to Black and Latino.
Braunstein leads a team of 500. About 350 of them are working specifically to end the HIV epidemic, a reachable goal of bringing new diagnoses to fewer than 1,350 annually. They do grassroots outreach, connect people to healthcare partners, monitor infection rates.
It requires a large team, a lot of effort, long-standing, well-established relationships with community partners and provider partners in New York City, sustained and deep support from our federal partners.
90% of the Bureau's funding for HIV prevention comes from the federal government, from programs now slated for cuts in several Trump administration proposals. Though the exact amount of cuts is still under debate in Congress and tied up in courts, Braunstein says any loss of funding will cause harm.
Would that change the trajectory of the goal to end the AIDS epidemic?
Most certainly it would. This is a workforce that is talented, skilled, has been invested in, and is ready to serve. So, any kind of erosion in funding that threatens that workforce is highly concerning, not just for HIV, but for public health in general.
Consequences that would be felt more by some.
This is the thing with HIV. It really tells the story of intersecting disenfranchisement. People who have multiple disenfranchised identities, belong to multiple disenfranchised communities, who have historically been, less well able to access healthcare or quality healthcare, are much more vulnerable either to acquiring HIV in the first place, or because they can't get access to things like pre-exposure prophylaxis or STI testing.
I've been helping others.
Brooks, too, recognizes that less resources would compromise needed outreach.
I feel like there's not enough promotion with advocacy in general that scrolls down our timelines. Everyone is claiming that, they're on PrEP or undetectable, but the math is not mathing, and it's not making sense.
Brooks continues to do her part, using her platform as an actress, influencer, and advocate with AmitaCare to get the word out that while it's still available, people should be accessing the care and prevention tools they need to thrive.
We've made leaps and bounds, let's be clear. Me being an advocate and activist for, sex work is essential for people to step up and PrEP up.
Braunstein says all is not lost. The fight against HIV has hard-won gains because of the bipartisan support in the federal government, and that will be what it takes to keep momentum in the fight against AIDS going.
We are at a critical juncture, and I am an optimist at heart, and I am so proud of the work public health can do and has done. And public health is scrappy, but I know that we need support to really have success.
Erin, thank you. Coming up next.
We've come a long way, and we need to continue the fight. And there are a lot of people that'll fight with us.
We'll take a closer look at how the LGBTQ+ community here on Staten Island has evolved, from the days of Alice Austin to Pride 2025. This picturesque spot nestled in the Staten Island neighborhood of Rosebank is a unique piece of LGBTQ+ history. It was home to socialite Alice Austin, who in the late 1800s captured some of the earliest photos of women embracing and dressed in drag. Her work is the subject of a new book, Too Good to Get Married.
By the time she and her friends hit about 25, it was like, okay, well, now we're supposed to get married and assume our roles as wives and mothers. And these pictures were very much part of a rebellion against that. When Alice was growing up, it was actually thought that women had no sexual desire, like for men or women or anyone. So these very passionate relationships that developed among women were not seen as dangerous or provocative.
Austin and her partner Gertrude Tate lived together on this property for more than 30 years. Now landmark, the home is a museum that provides educational programming and a safe space for LGBTQ+ youth.
We have a queer ecologies garden where all the plants are non-binary, self-seeding, and historically significantly queer. And we get those kids into the garden, we have them writing reflections, we also have them planting, and it's a real physical connection to this historic site.
Less than a mile away from the museum, the Pride Center of Staten Island is also making connections. The community center is focused on education, empowerment, and acceptance. And just this year, the center was allowed to march under its own banner for the first time in the borough's St. Patrick's Day Parade. A milestone at a time when the current political climate has impacted sponsorship of some Pride celebrations. But this year's theme, Rise Up, Pride and Protest, says it all. And the Pride Center of Staten Island is proudly doing just that.
To finally march with our banner for the first time was just absolutely incredible. The good-heartedness and the kindness of the folks that lined the street was amazing. I mean, you wouldn't have expected that if you didn't know Staten Island.
It was a historic day in the LGBTQ+ fight for acceptance in the borough. One that took years of strength, persistence, and determination.
We forced the change, really just continued to pushed on the politicians, pushed on the perception by the community. Ultimately what happened is the participants of the parade started not participating. People said, we don't want to be a part of this. If you want to have a parade and be a bigoted parade, then you do it yourself.
That community pressure led to change for the first time in more than 6 decades.
Pride Center of Staten Island has been extended an invitation.
The organizers of the borough's St. Patrick's Day Parade lifted their ban on LGBTQ+ groups marching under their own banners, after years of citing Catholic Church principles for the omission.
According to them, you can't be Irish, Catholic, and a member of the LGBTQIA+ community.
Members of the community have fought for years to be recognized. The Pride Center of Staten Island is not only providing a collective voice for the community, but also some vital resources.
Most of our programs here at the center are driven from the community itself and the needs they have. We have free mental health therapy. We do a lot of support groups. We have a full cultural awareness team that goes out and provides cultural competency trainings across Staten Island. We just had our youth prom, so we partnered with a high school in Staten Island, and we have all the kids go there. We got donated clothes from around Staten Island and food, and they had an amazing time.
This is a real beacon for this community. What are you hearing in terms of the needs at the moment?
I think the needs of the community is to have community. They want a place that they can go and meet other people, a place to go when they're worried about what's going on in the world.
Recent headlines have caused concern, from the closure of the Federal Office of Equity and Inclusion to the removal of transgender references from federal websites, including the Stonewall National Monument. And just this month, threats to erase the name of slain gay rights leader and Navy veteran Harvey Milk from a U.S. naval ship.
It breaks my heart. We've come a long way, and we need to continue the fight. And there are a lot of people that'll fight with us.
This community as a whole has been through the AIDS crisis. We've been through trying to get gender passed, trying to get marriage equality passed, and we've always relied on each other.
When we originally started.
And together, they've made significant change on Staten Island, creating wider acceptance and an army of allies along the way. Something to be celebrated.
For the past 10 years, we've had a festival at Sunk Harbor Cultural Center. It's improved in attendance. It's attended by so many people of all walks. And I could say this year we had about 2,500 people, which was really amazing. I think everybody has somebody that's gay in their life, whether it's somebody they work with, they live with, or they know. And I think the community and the kindness of far outweighs the conservancy that you see for Staten Island.
What does the next chapter for this community look like?
I would like to see a time when we're not secularized and we are just part of the community, and just as someone has blue eyes and blonde hair and they happen to be gay or straight, there's no difference between any of us.
Just continue some of the things that we fought for that we feel like are being taken back, continue to push for those things, making sure that children are still protected, making sure that we can continue to be married and happy people, because that's what, at the end of the day, what we all want to be.
That wraps up Still Marching, a New York 1 Pride Month special. But before we go, the Alice Austin House is celebrating a homecoming of sorts. Austin's catalog of nearly 8,000 images are being returned to the museum from historic Richmond Town, which has been caring for them since Austin's death. As we celebrate Pride in Alice Austin, we want to leave you now with a look at some of her work. Thanks for being with us. I'm Frank DiLella. Happy Pride. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. For more premiere theater coverage and exclusive interviews, click the subscribe button. You can also download the Spectrum News app or watch us on TV for the latest information, balanced coverage, weather updates every 10 minutes, and more. We'll see you there.